What if the reason you feel stuck, tired, and creatively blocked is not because you're doing too little, but because you're doing too much inside your own mind? Not too much work, not too much responsibility, too much forcing. In Taoist philosophy, there is a principle called Wu Wei. It is often translated as non-doing, but that translation can be misleading. Wu Wei does not mean laziness. It does not mean passivity. It does not mean giving up. It means acting without force, moving without inner struggle, letting the right action emerge from alignment instead of pressure. And strangely, this ancient Taoist idea now echoes through modern psychology and neuroscience. Because some of the best moments of human performance do not happen when we are pushing at maximum intensity. They happen when effort becomes clean, quiet, and almost invisible. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists call it flow. Musicians describe it as the moment the music starts playing itself. In neuroscience, researchers sometimes describe part of this shift as a reduction in prefrontal overcontrol, when the part of the brain constantly monitoring, correcting, and interfering relaxes just enough for skilled action to move more naturally. So in this video, we're going to explore a simple but profound question. What if real power is not found in pushing harder, but in learning how not to force? There is an old kind of wisdom hidden in that question, but to understand it, let's begin with a story. There was once a craftsman who lived near the edge of a mountain village. He was known for making beautiful wooden bowls and boxes. Nothing he made was loud or extravagant, but everything carried a kind of quiet perfection. His hands seemed to understand the wood before his mind did. The curves were smooth, the edges balanced, the finish simple and alive. People said his work had spirit in it. As the years passed, his reputation spread. More people began ordering from him. More requests came in. More money was offered. At first, this seemed like a blessing, but slowly, the joy in his work began to disappear. He started rushing. He measured too often. He corrected every small movement. He worried whether each piece would be good enough. He compared today's work to the praise he had received last year. His hands grew tense. His breathing became shallow. The same tools he once moved with ease now felt heavy. The same wood that once seemed cooperative now felt stubborn. He worked longer and harder, but the more he forced, the less alive his work became. One day, an old traveler passed through the village and stopped at the workshop. He picked up one of the bowls, turned it in the light, and asked the craftsman, "When did you begin trying so hard?" The craftsman looked confused. He said, "I'm trying hard because I care. I'm trying hard because I must do better." The traveler smiled and replied, "Perhaps, but a river does not move by straining. It moves because it follows its nature. That is Wu Wei, not collapse, not apathy, not disengagement. Wu Wei is when action becomes so aligned with reality that it stops feeling like friction. It is when the mind stops interrupting every movement. It is when you no longer try to dominate the moment, but instead participate in it. This is one of the deepest Taoist insights. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly points toward a way of living that is powerful precisely because it is not aggressive. Water is the classic image. Water is soft, but it wears down stone. It does not argue with the shape of the land. It responds. It adapts. It finds the path of least resistance, and by doing so, it becomes unstoppable. For the Taoists, the human being suffers when they move against the grain of life. We exhaust ourselves trying to control what must be allowed, forcing what should unfold, gripping where we should soften. And often, the tragedy is that we think this inner tightening is strength. But modern science offers a fascinating parallel here. When people become overly self-conscious during skilled performance, their performance often gets worse. A pianist who starts overthinking finger placement can suddenly stumble on a passage they have played 1,000 times. An athlete who begins consciously controlling every movement can lose fluidity. A speaker who becomes too aware of their own voice can become unnatural and stiff. This is sometimes related to overactivation of higher-order monitoring systems in the brain. In simple terms, the conscious mind begins interfering with processes that work better when they are trusted. Of course, effort matters. Training matters. Practice matters. The craftsman only reached effortless action because he had spent years refining his skill. Wu Wei is not the absence of discipline. It is what discipline becomes when it ripens. It is the moment when preparation gives way to presence. This is also why Wu Wei is so relevant today. Many people live in a permanent state of mental forcing. We are constantly optimizing, comparing, monitoring, and adjusting ourselves. We try to improve our productivity, hack our focus, control our emotions, manage our image, and predict outcomes before they happen. The result is often not mastery but tension, not clarity but noise, not flow but fragmentation. The Taoist answer is not to become less capable. It is to become less divided. When the body and attention are no longer fighting each other, energy returns. When action is no longer squeezed through anxiety, intelligence expresses itself more fully. When the mind stops grabbing every moment, the moment begins to breathe again. This is why meditation becomes such an important doorway into Wu Wei. Not because meditation gives us another thing to master, but because it reveals how much unnecessary effort is happening inside us all the time. It shows us the subtle habits of tightening around thought, tightening around emotion, tightening around identity, tightening around the need to get somewhere. And once these patterns are seen, another possibility appears. Not a forced calm, not a performance of spirituality, but a quieter, more open relationship to experience. So before we go deeper, I want to bring this into practice. For the next few minutes, we're going to do a simple micro-practice in open awareness. This is not about concentration. It is not about controlling the breath. It is not about achieving a special state. It is an experiment in not trying. If you're sitting, let your body settle naturally. If you're lying down, just let the surface beneath you support your weight. You do not need a perfect posture. You only need enough comfort that the body can stop negotiating with itself. Take one easy breath in and let it go. Now notice the places where effort is hiding. Maybe the jaw is tight. Maybe the shoulders are slightly raised. Maybe the belly is being held. Maybe the eyes are trying too hard to focus even when closed. Without forcing relaxation, just let those places know they do not have to work so hard right now. Notice the breath, but do not shape it. Let it be shallow if it is shallow. Let it be deep if it is deep. You are not here to improve the breath. You are here to stop interfering with it. Now open your awareness to everything at once. The sounds around you, the sensations in the body, the movement of thought, the changing emotional tone of the moment. Do not chase any of it. Do not push any of it away. If a thought appears, let it appear. If a sensation appears, let it appear. If restlessness appears, let it appear. This is the practice. Not controlling experience. Not fixing experience. Making room for experience. You may notice the mind trying to turn this into a task, trying to do open awareness correctly, trying to become calm, trying to have a breakthrough. When that happens, simply notice the trying. And instead of fighting the trying, let even that be included. There is nothing outside the field of awareness that needs to be rejected. The Taoist gesture is softer than control. It says yes to what is already here, and from that yes, strain begins to dissolve. For a few moments, imagine your awareness like a wide sky. Thoughts are clouds. Sensations are weather. Emotions are passing winds. None of them need to be stopped for the sky to remain open. Rest as the openness, even briefly, and if you get pulled into a thought, the moment you notice, you are already back. No struggle is needed. Just return without judgment. Now gently bring to mind one area of your life where you have been forcing. Maybe your work, maybe a relationship, maybe your healing, maybe your creative process, maybe even your meditation itself. Notice what forcing feels like in the body when you think of this area. Where does it live? In the chest? In the throat? In the forehead? In the stomach? Just notice. Now ask very softly, what would this look like if I stopped pushing against life here? Not what would happen if I gave up, but what would change if I became less aggressive inside? Let the question open. Do not rush to answer it. Sometimes the body understands before the mind does. Take one more easy breath, and let the whole practice end without trying to hold on to it. This is the essence of the exercise. Not mastery, not perfect stillness, just a brief taste of what happens when awareness no longer behaves like a clenched fist. Now let's return to the craftsman. After speaking with the traveler, he did not suddenly become enlightened. He did not instantly recover his old grace. In fact, at first, things became more frustrating. Because once he heard the words, "Stop trying so hard," he realized how deeply trying had entered him. It was in his wrists, in his breathing, in the way he leaned toward the future result before his hands had completed the present movement. So he began very simply. Before touching the wood, he would stand still for a moment. Before making the first cut, he would exhale. Before correcting a mistake, he would pause and ask whether the correction was needed or whether it was just anxiety trying to leave its fingerprint on the work. At first, these pauses felt unnatural. His mind said, "This is inefficient. This is too slow. You're falling behind." But over time, something changed. He began to notice the grain again. He began to feel the difference between a movement that was guided and a movement that was forced. His tools became lighter in his hands. Some days the old tension returned, but now he could detect it earlier. He no longer mistook tension for care. This is important because many people do. They think if they stop pressuring themselves, they will become lazy. If they stop overthinking, they will become careless. If they stop controlling everything, life will collapse. But often the opposite is true. When the mind is no longer wasting energy on inner resistance, more energy becomes available for direct, intelligent action. You can see this in ordinary life. A parent trying too hard to create the perfect emotional response for their child often becomes stiff and disconnected. But when they soften and simply listen, the right words come more naturally. A writer staring at a blank page and demanding brilliance may produce nothing for hours. But when they stop forcing originality and simply begin with one true sentence, momentum returns. A person trying desperately to fall asleep usually stays awake longer. But when they stop wrestling with sleep and allow rest without demand, sleep often comes on its own. The Taoist insight appears again and again. Forcing delays what allowing can invite. This does not mean every problem disappears through relaxation. Some situations require planning, courage, and sustained work. Wu Wei is not a magic formula for avoiding difficulty. It is a different quality of engagement with difficulty. It asks, can action arise from contact with reality instead of fear-driven resistance to reality? That question matters because fear-driven action often distorts what we are trying to do. We act too early or too late. We push too hard or retreat too soon. We impose our will without listening. The mind becomes noisy, and once noise takes over, subtle intelligence gets buried. Meditation, especially in the Taoist spirit, retrains sensitivity to this noise. It teaches us to detect the micro moments of interference. the unnecessary tightening before a conversation, the mental leaning before an outcome, the urge to control another person's reaction, the way we rehearse, brace, and contract around life. Once these patterns become visible, life becomes a laboratory. You begin noticing how often forcing enters simple actions. Answering a message, making breakfast, walking into a room, trying to sound impressive, trying to be liked, trying to be spiritual, trying to be calm. And in seeing all this, a new form of intelligence appears. Not the intelligence of analysis alone, but the intelligence of alignment. The Taoist masters often pointed out that nature does not hurry, yet everything gets done. This is not a slogan about procrastination. It is a reminder that reality has rhythms. Growth has rhythms. Speech has rhythms. Relationships have rhythms. Creativity has rhythms. When we ignore these rhythms and impose a mechanical pace on everything, we create conflict inside ourselves. This is where the image of water becomes so powerful. Water does not lack strength. It lacks rigidity. It responds to the shape of the world without losing its nature. In the same way, Wu Wei invites us to remain fully engaged while dropping unnecessary hardness. And perhaps that is one of the deepest forms of meditation. Not escaping life, not retreating into some protected inner chamber, but becoming so undivided that action itself becomes meditative. The craftsman discovered this slowly. His workshop changed, not externally at first, but atmospherically. The rush was gone. The panic in the small corrections was gone. He still worked carefully, but now care came from attention rather than tension. His bowls regained something people had always loved in them. Not perfection, presence. And that may be one of the best ways to understand effortless action. It is not superhuman productivity. It is not mystical passivity. It is presence moving without self-violence. So if you take anything from this video, let it be this. Trying harder is not always the answer. Sometimes the next level of intelligence appears only when force is interrupted. Sometimes your creativity is waiting behind one unclenched breath. Sometimes your healing is waiting behind one moment of not arguing with what you feel. Sometimes your best action is hidden beneath layers of unnecessary effort. Wu Wei is not about becoming inactive. It is about becoming unforced. And that may be why it feels so rare. Because in a culture built on constant pushing, non-forcing can feel almost rebellious. But it is also deeply practical. It changes how you work, how you speak, how you create, how you rest, and how you meet uncertainty. So here is a simple experiment for today. Pick one thing you usually force. Just one. Maybe it is a conversation. Maybe it is writing. Maybe it is meditation. Maybe it is the way you rush through your morning. And before you begin, pause. Take one breath. Feel where pressure is entering the body. Then ask, what would it mean to do this without inner aggression? Not lazily, not carelessly, but without violence toward yourself. Try it once. Observe what changes. That observation is part of the path. If this reflection helped you, subscribe to Beyond the Mind for more explorations of Buddhist, Vedic, and Taoist wisdom through the lens of modern science. And if you try this today, leave a comment with the one place in your life where you noticed that forcing less actually allowed more to happen. Sometimes the deepest action begins when the struggle ends.